And ladies and gentlemen, once again, welcome to an exciting Australian Indian Radio's daily live update coming to you from our stations here. And it is a wonderful day out there today. And we will start by first taking a very quick look at the weather and seeing what the weather's got for us today and maybe for the rest of the weekend as well. So the maximum is 24. Partly cloudy and a possible rainfall which will be from about 0 to about 0.4 millimeters. Chance of a rain which I've just mentioned is about 30% only, and Brisbane area partly cloudy, slight 30% chance of shower in the late morning and afternoon with light winds. Fire danger is low to moderate, but as I always say, please always do take that precautions. As we know, it doesn't take much, and just a little spark is what it takes. But what it can turn into, we all know. We've all been there. We have done so much fundraising and so many lives have been lost. So always be very careful with that. Now, the next is sun protection. And of course, the UV rating for today is 4. 4 is moderate, which is not bad. But once again, never underestimate, the power of sun. People can, we don't ban, I don't ban, I can go out. But no, it will do you harm in the long term as well. So, if you are going out, make sure you have the necessary protection, but always be careful. So, the UV protection today is recommended from now till about 1:30. So, that's the weather news. Well, right now, let's look at some of the coronavirus cases. So, Queensland confirmed cases 1,068. And recovery 1,057 with 6 recorded deaths. Australia-wide 9,359 and recovery 7,626 with the death toll at 106,000, which is quite a big number when you consider Australia and the number of people that we have. So when we talk about ratios and the number of people, that's a debate that the Indian government has at this point in time with the rising numbers, but they always challenge it. But if you look at the number of people, if you work out the ratios, we are still doing better. We are managing better. Delhi is now open. Our correspondent there, I spoke to him a few days back and he said, no, everything's okay. We just going around in the normal way. So worldwide, the confirmed cases so far is 12.4 million and 6.79 million recovery, 557k deaths. So, that's quite a lot of the people who have passed away with coronavirus. So ladies and gentlemen, once again, today we have lots and lots to talk about. And as we always know that we always seem to run out of time because there's just so much to talk about. Well, today we're going to go on the topic that everyone's talking about right at this point in time, the coronavirus cases in Victoria. So let's see what's happening there.
Thanks for joining us for the daily update. First of all, we have 3,397 cases of coronavirus in Victoria. That's 288 more than our last update. There's been some reconciliations, but that's the net number. 47 Victorians are in hospital, 12 are in intensive care. Of those 288 cases, and given the size of that number, the magnitude of that number, there's still the vast majority that are still being investigated by our public health team, but 26 of those are connected to contained and known outbreaks. 262 of those are still under investigation by our public health team. Those numbers will jump around a bit. There'll be linkages back to other cases, but again, that detective work has to be done first. Now, can I just highlight what I think is an equally significant number in terms of the daily update? We did 37,588 tests yesterday. That is the biggest single day of testing that has been done, and by some considerable margin. When you're looking that much, then that's the exact strategy. You're finding cases of the virus and you're able then to do the contact tracing, to take steps to limit the movement, to isolate, to take all those necessary precautions to try and make sure that positive cases and close contacts are not moving around the community. They are in fact in their home. Now, I know that there will be great concern about these numbers. People will feel particularly concerned to see that number as high as it is. I just want to remind everybody that we've been very, very clear We didn't take the step to return to staying at home, except for the 4 reasons for metropolitan Melbourne, because the numbers were stable. We didn't take that step because we didn't have a problem. We took that step because we knew it would need to get worse before it got better, and that unless we took those steps, we simply wouldn't be able to bring a sense of control to this. We would not be able to see a stabilisation and then a driving down of those case numbers. At the same time, no one should underestimate how significant, how big a challenge that we all face. It is very significant, and that's why each of us have to play our part. So I know and understand there'll be concern across the community to see that number. I just want everyone to acknowledge a couple of points. It was always going to get worse before it got better. We're doing more testing than has ever been done, and not by a small margin, but by a massive margin. I'm very grateful to everybody who has participated in that testing program, and I would urge all Victorians follow the rules. And if you have symptoms, even mild symptoms, please come forward and get tested. That gives us the most powerful tool, a sense of where the virus is, how it is moving, and how it is we can best respond to it. Beyond that, I just want to make some quick announcements, and I'll ask Brett to add to my comments both on the epidemiology of the day and also the announcement in relation to masks. As you know, there's been, for some time now, there's been a bit of debate about at what point masks become important. We think we're at a stage now, and the advice to me from the Chief Health Officer, and it's supported by AHPPC, it's supported by others, is that through an abundance of caution, through the fact that it's relatively easy, we should request of all Victorians when they are out of their home, and this relates principally to metropolitan Melbourne and Mitchell Shire, when you're out of your home for one of those 4 permitted reasons, and where you can't maintain that 1.5 metre social distance, so whether you're in an Uber or a taxi, or if you're on public transport, or many other examples, even shopping for the basics you need when you need them, either a homemade mask or another mask, and I'll come to that in a moment. It is our request of you. It's not compulsory. We're simply asking that if you can wear a mask where you can't distance, that's exactly what we would like you to do. That's a relatively small contribution, but one that can make a really big difference. Brett will speak a little bit more about the science behind this and how it is that the sorts of benefits we think that might come from this. To that end, we have, because this is not something that's going to be for a week or even 6 weeks, I think masks in those circumstances where you can't maintain distance will be a feature of our response to the pandemic for the foreseeable future, maybe many, many months. So it's not a matter of urgency, it's a matter that now's the time to move to that, now's the time to do that common sense thing, and to that end, we've already begun the process of getting 2 million reusable masks made, and we will be able to then distribute those throughout the community. And in the interim, that takes a little bit of time. But again, this is not something that's a week or a month. It's going to be with us for quite some time, and we think it'll be perhaps even more important on the other side of this lockdown, as it is now. We'll also, in the interim, provide up to 1 million additional single-use masks. And I'll have more to say about how we're going to distribute those, how they'll be available. I think there are some priority groups that probably will receive those masks, those single-use masks in the first instance. There's many single-use masks that are being used now. For instance, some of the different communities we've been talking about in recent days, for instance, public housing tenants. We think that might be, there already are some masks being used there, but we might be able to take a further step in that particular environment. There'll be lots of examples like that. That's not to say that we should be compelling people. That's not to say that if you're wearing a mask, you're doing the wrong thing. We just need to be all conscious, to work together, to be as respectful of each other as we can be. It's a small thing, but our request, not an obligation, but our request is that if you are out in metropolitan Melbourne or Mitchell Shire for a lawful purpose, and you don't think you're going to be able to maintain that 1.5 metre distance in a cab, in an Uber, on public transport, maybe at the shopping centre if things were quite busy, then we would ask that you wear a mask. And it can be a homemade mask, and I think Brett will even talk to scarves and things of that nature. No mask, even surgical grade, reduces the risk of infection to zero. There's always some inherent risk. That's why it's still so important. If you're unwell, if you have symptoms, then you shouldn't be out.
So the message is quite clear. If you are unwell, please stay at home and don't get out there. And this is the message that's been coming out. But as we know, people do have to move about. They have to get out. And as you said, that we must look after each other and be very, very vigilant. As we know, in the cases of some of the security guards at those centers, very questionable, their behavior, and it's a very bad reflection on the communities. So, this kind of things happen, and people need to be very, very careful. This is, people's life we're talking about, not only one, but when the spread gets out into the community, it's so many people, and, it affects everyone. So we always need to be that extra bit careful. The 288 cases, on day 2 of Melbourne lockdown, that was, a big, huge spike in the numbers there in Melbourne. We've been speaking to people in Melbourne. I mean, generally they're keeping well, but of course we know the clusters and whatever. And of course that whole of Victoria, as far as Queensland is concerned, has been identified as a hot spot. So if you're coming from Victoria into Queensland, you will need to take those precautions. You'll have to go through those checks and balances before you are let in. And even when you are let in, you will have to, abide by those rules that have been set out by the Health Department. Well, right now, let's go and have a listen to our Prime Minister.
We're at home and there are people around. We still have to practice the social distancing. It's still not okay for hugs and handshakes. It's important to maintain the discipline of the social distancing behind closed doors, not just out in the public space. Let's guard against complacency. Let's make sure that we maintain the social distancing, following all of those good habits when it comes to a COVID-safe community and a COVID-safe economy. Lives and livelihoods, of course, depend on it, and just because there may be very few cases where you live, do not think for a second that there are sets of circumstances that could see the virus outbreak again and find its way. So we all continue to have this important responsibility and this important discipline that we have to be able to maintain.
Authorised by S. Morrison.
And of course, that same message coming out that, we all need to be responsible, act responsibly, and we need to be vigilant as well, and also keep our eyes and ears open to, if you see anything that it can be reported to the authorities so that, checks and balances can be put into place. As we know, there's so much happening. Yesterday, we've seen that those long queues at the border as well. And so let's hear from the Premier as Queensland opens for business.
Well, it's great news. Our Works for Queensland projects right across regional Queensland are kicking off today. This means over 3,400 jobs across regional Queensland, $150 million.
Works for Queensland has been one of the most successful programs that the Palaszczuk government has introduced in Queensland.
The Works for Queensland program is the greatest program I've seen in the 21 budgets I've delivered here in Gladstone for coming to local government, and it really is something we need to continue. $5.2 million for this COVID Works for Queensland is fantastic for us. We're going to use that not just here at the Gladstone Aquatic Centre, we're going to spread it right across the region.
There's over 50 jobs that are going to be created by this $5.2 million coming into the Gladstone region with the Works for Queensland program. This is great news for Gladstone people who will be able to come and utilise facilities just like this into the future on the back of this funding.
But Works for Queensland is about getting people into employment as quickly as possible as we recover and unite together.
And that's a very, very wonderful and great message coming from the Premier. We know that she has been busy and going all around the state, keeping up to date with the communities and also keeping in check on what's happening right there at the border as well. So, there's a lot of responsibility there and a very, very busy time indeed for the Premier and, of course, for everyone itself. So, we'll take a quick commercial break and then we'll go to a very breaking news in India about the gangster who has been arrested, well, it's not arrested, he's passed away. So what happened in that case? So we'll have a quick look at that. But I would also like to, today bring to you snippets from the National Cabinet, which met yesterday as well, and some of the key findings. That is rather long, so I've kept it to the long, and we'll see towards the end, and we'll see how we go time-wise. But there's some important decisions, and it is very good to see that, the mechanism and the wheels working at a national level. When everyone gets together and unites to work for a common cause, there can be some great results coming out. Right now, let's take a quick commercial break.
ग्लोबनेट रियलिटी 1989 से लेकर अब तक का विश्वसनीय और माननीय ब्रिस्बेन का रियल एस्टेट एजेंट है। उषा चंद्रा, जो कि ग्लोबनेट की डायरेक्टर है, अपने ग्राहकों को ईमानदार और एथिक सर्विसेज देती हैं। अगर आप ब्रिस्बेन की प्रॉपर्टी में पूंजी लगाना चाहते हैं और आप चाहते हैं कि आपकी प्रॉपर्टी को प्रोफेशनली मैनेज किया जाए, तो आप आज ही कांटेक्ट कीजिए उषा चंद्रा को। लैंडलाइन नंबर है 38654466 और मोबाइल नंबर है 0419775416। और आप प्रॉपर्टी की अधिक जानकारी और करंट अपडेट्स के लिए हमारी वेबसाइट पे लॉगिन कर सकते हैं। हमारी वेबसाइट है www.globenetreality.com.au। ग्लोबनेट रियलिटी आपका अपना लोकल रियल एस्टेट एजेंट है। हमारा पता है ग्लोबनेट रियलिटी, शॉप नंबर 5, 2281 सैंडगेट रोड, बुंदल, क्वींसलैंड। ग्लोबनेट रियलिटी, रियल एस्टेट इज अवर वर्ल्ड।
And it definitely is the world. Right now, it's time to go to news in brief. So what does a clown do in global pandemic? When Michelle Pease goes to work, locals smiles and tourists wonder. She usually leaves home as a clown, a fairy or a bee. But these days, she has to share her world on make-believe online. Make-believe online. So, now she has to just do what she can, and she does that online. Now, the next news is Ghislaine Maxwell denies Jeffrey Epstein charges and seeks bail, citing coronavirus risks. Now, of course, coronavirus will be used for any and every, case. Ghislaine Maxwell, the long-time associate and late financier Jeffrey Epstein, denies luring underage girls for him to sexually abuse and says she could contract COVID-19 in jail if she is denied bail. What about other people in jail? What's going to happen to them? So why should anyone else be treated differently? Well, right now in Northern Territory, so we are ready. Northern Territory health authorities reassure Territorians about coronavirus risks after U.S. Marine tests positive. Now, they managed to keep themselves quite safe up till now. Health authorities in Northern Territory say that the latest local coronavirus case, once again, someone from outside, a U.S. Marine on rotation in Darwin, presents a low risk to the community, and that if there are further military cases, it will be a minimal impact onto the health system there. And of course, Canberra people, what's happening with that? As Canberra records a new coronavirus case, which is linked to an outbreak in Victoria. So ICT residents are told to wear masks, but to ensure that they do not become complacent about the social distancing and hand hygiene to avoid a similar surge. And of course, Cheryl Watson, what's happening to the Bali bombing? So Cheryl Watson survived the Bali bombing and breast cancer and knew the fear when she saw it. So between overcoming Bali bombings, the breast cancer, Cheryl Watson has shouldered her fair share of trauma, and she has sound advice for those feeling flooded by the COVID-19 cases. And there are some of the interviews, and one of the interviews would be with her later, during the week, and we'll see how you can survive trauma and cases like this and avoid getting depressed, because as we know, depression kills as well. So ladies and gentlemen, there's some of the news there. Right now, let's go to the findings and the rulings of the National Cabinet before we go to that breaking news overseas.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today I'm joined by Professor Paul Murphy. Professor Paul Kelly. I've got Brendan Murphy still on the brain. No, you're not far from us, Brendan. But it's great to have Professor Kelly with us here today. He's taken over, of course, the role of Chief Medical Officer and attended his first National Cabinet meeting today. It is the 23rd time the National Cabinet has met in the last 4 months. Before I go to the details of that, I just wanted to note that last night I held a very productive summit meeting with Prime Minister Abe from Japan. We had a very warm and constructive discussion, very aligned on our goals, both for the region and more broadly on the global issues that we discussed, and had further discussions regarding our ongoing defence cooperation, and particularly following on from the agreement we signed this week on space cooperation. There are many other topics that we covered, but it was about an hour and a half long meeting, which is well over what we'd originally planned, and I think that just goes to the depth of relationship that we've been able to establish. Of course, we discussed at length our various experiences with COVID-19, and Japan currently is experiencing an uptick, a spike in their numbers in not a too dissimilar way that we are here in Australia, which I'll come to now. The news from Victoria remains very concerning. The Premier will stand up later today and he'll update the situation there, but it is concerning. They have called for help, they're getting help. But the key here is that all states and territories again reaffirm their support for Victoria in providing whatever resources they needed to deal with the outbreak in Victoria. To stick to the plan, to stick to the strategy, and to ensure that is well resourced and well implemented. And that was the focus of the briefing that the Premier Andrews gave to National Cabinet today, and he received strong support from all of his colleagues. The resourcing that is being put in, whether it's in testing or tracing, or the support particularly in New South Wales and in South Australia in managing the border town issues, is significant, and of course the Commonwealth is supporting that strongly as well. Another key part of the discussion today was that we need to be very careful to protect against complacency in other parts of the country. Now, this is particularly true behind closed doors, not just out in the open. This is a lesson out of the Victorian experience. It's important that we are seeing in organised venues those sorts of activities in the main, although there are some examples to the contrary, that the rules are seeking to be followed. But when we're at home and there are people around, we still have to practice the social distancing. It's still not okay for hugs and handshakes. It's important to maintain the discipline of the social distancing behind closed doors, not just out in the public space. The restrictions on people being able to go to each other's houses have been eased right across the country, with the obvious exception of Victoria. And to ensure that continues, then it's important that social distancing is the norm. It's not the exception, it's the norm, and it's going to be the norm with us for a very long time, until at least we have a vaccine that can be mass-produced and made available across the population. So even in places like in Western Australia, for example, where there is a considerable easing of restrictions, it is very important that the social distancing practices, the washing the hands, the no handshakes, all of these things, downloading of the COVID Safe app is important, because if there were to be an outbreak in any of those places, in Queensland.
Yes, and that message coming from the Prime Minister there, very, very important. We cannot be complacent, and that's the consistent message which has been, by our Premier, from the Premier of the Victoria as well. So everyone's been saying that same thing. Well, right now the story that I've been talking about, as we all know, Vikas Dubey, that the notorious gangster, and what happened was that the car that he was being brought into jail was capsized, and of course he passed away in that. About a few days back, and when he was caught in Ujjain, he yelled out, and that's caught on camera, "Hey, don't you know that I am Vikas Dubey?" So how was he protected for such a long time when people knew authorities knew about what he was doing out there. Let's have a quick look. Now, as we know, these are sources that we have collected from the website. How true each and every aspect of that is, I will take no responsibility for that. This is the views of the channel that has put it out there. But there are some interesting discussion from the panel and from the public out there. So, you be the judge.
Let's raise some of the big questions then tonight. Was Vikas Dubey's arrest stage managed as is being alleged? Is the gangster Neta police nexus still flourishing in Uttar Pradesh? Who shielded Dubey for 20 long years? Will the truth ever come out of Vikas Dubey's deep political and police connects? I'm joined by Vikram Singh, the former DGP of UP, Ghanshyam Tiwari, Samajwadi Party spokesperson, Anila Singh, BJP spokesperson, Rahul Srivastav, National Affairs Editor, who has tracked Uttar Pradesh for years. And I want to come to you, Rahul, first. You tell me, from your long experience of Uttar Pradesh, give our audience a sense of Vikas Dubey's political links. How does someone who is found, who actually murders a politician in jail in the presence of 25 witnesses in 2001, get all those witnesses to turn hostile and then survive for 2 decades? Who protected him all these years, Rahul?
Rajdeep, the politics protected him. Politics in Uttar Pradesh protected him. Politics in Uttar Pradesh made people like him a very necessary component of how to win an election. It started sometime in the 70s. Rajdeep, you'll be shocked to know that when he was detained and he surrendered, and he was in sometime in 2008, 6 members, MLAs of a political party in Uttar Pradesh were out there to receive him.
Which party?
6 MLAs of a political party, BSP.
So BSP,
That's the time when he was hobnobbing with the BSP.
So BSP in 2008. BSP 2008, and then Samajwadi Party was in power earlier when he was acquitted and all the witnesses turned hostile in that murder case.
Rajdeep, his wife Anita is a Zilla Parishad member from Samajwadi Party. Do you know that when he escaped that night, the police was picketing outside? There is a pond behind his house. Nobody thought he will escape from there. People say that he escaped on a cycle. That's all misleading. He, with the help of his wife, had got a small iron bridge constructed over that lake, which is suitable for 2-3 motorcycles. He escaped from that route. He had planned his escape. Let me shock you further, Rajdeep. While stories and UP police are trying to claim that he was a first-timer who had suddenly landed up in Ujjain, the police should find out whose car was it, which he used to reach Ujjain. There was High Court apparently written in front of that car. Then let me shock you further, Rajdeep. In 2000, nearly 12 years ago, Mr. Dubey had an accident in Ujjain. He was a regular in Ujjain. Every year on a certain season and an auspicious day, he used to go to Ujjain. He's familiar with Ujjain and the Mahakal temple. He used to go there every year. That is the accident that took place in 12 years back. He injured his leg. That's why the limp in his leg. So when people are saying that he was unfamiliar with the area and that's why they suspected something, is all incorrect, misleading information being said. There is definitely much more to the surrender.
So there you are, as I mentioned before, that the truth in the story and everything will come out in days to come, and we will follow that up. But ladies and gentlemen, once again, it's been wonderful having your company. Now, looking at all this news, all the bad news is happening, the coronavirus cases and the case of Vikas Dubey and all these kind of things that are happening. Let's end up on a slightly brighter note. Let's go and look at Bhagavad Gita. Yes, I'm not going to give you a religious sermon here, but this is a report by a Western person who is looked at Bhagavad Gita and then his take on what the meaning and how it can motivate everyone in times like this, in tough times.
What is the Bhagavad Gita? The Bhagavad Gita is the Word of God in person. It is the divine conversation between a man called Arjuna and God himself in the human form, Lord Krishna. The conversation took place in Kurukshetra, India, more than 5,000 years ago. The Bhagavad Gita answers the all-important questions of who are we? Who is God? Why do we suffer? Is there life after death? Is there life on other planets? How do we become and remain happy in this and the next life? How can we attain the kingdom of God? One may ask, what led to the great war on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, where the Bhagavad Gita was spoken? More than 5,000 years ago, the great king Vichitravirya passed away. Because his eldest son, Dhritarashtra, was born blind and thus not fit to rule, Pandu, the younger son, inherited the kingdom. After the death of King Pandu, his 5 sons, known as the Pandavas, became the lawful inheritors of the kingdom. But as the Pandavas were just still boys, Dhritarashtra assumed the throne for himself. Dhritarashtra had 100 sons, known as the Kauravas. When the Pandavas came of age and were ready to rule the kingdom, they did not want the entire kingdom for themselves, which was rightfully theirs. They were willing to share the kingdom with their cousins. Thus the kingdom was divided into 2 halves between the Pandavas and the Kauravas. Duryodhana, the eldest of the Kauravas, was not satisfied with his share. He wanted to enjoy the entire kingdom for himself. He made several attempts to kill the Pandavas, but was unsuccessful. He then unlawfully took possession of the entire kingdom and forced the Pandavas into exile. The Pandavas then requested just 5 villages, 1 for each brother. To this Duryodhana replied he would not give them enough land to stick a pin into. Lord Krishna pleaded for a peaceful and non-violent resolution to the land dispute, but Duryodhana rejected him and declared war on the Pandavas. The big war of Mahabharata was thus inevitable. In preparation for the war, both Duryodhana and Arjuna approached Lord Krishna for help. Krishna, as God himself, would not turn away anyone who approaches him for help, be they good or wicked. Lord Krishna offered his entire army to one side and himself as an advisor to the other side. Duryodhana snapped at Lord Krishna's army, and Arjuna was eager for the Lord himself as an advisor. Thus Lord Krishna became the advisor and charioteer to Arjuna. Arjuna faced a dilemma on the battlefield, whether to fight for his rights or run away from the war and let the wicked and evil sons of Dhritarashtra rule the kingdom.
So there you are, ladies and gentlemen, a little bit about Bhagavad Gita there. And do enjoy whatever's left of the weekend. Make the best of it. Spend quality time with your family and friends. But always be very mindful of all the precautions that need to be taken at this point in time. Remember, it's not going to last, but it's going to last longer if we do not follow the rules and regulations and what's been set out there. So, ladies and gentlemen, this has been another presentation of Australian Indian Radio's daily live coverage. And I hope that you have enjoyed today's function and event. And if you would like to, be part of this, you are quite welcome. Everyone's welcome to come and join in. If you have any topic that you need to discuss, if you have any burning issue that needs to be discussed, we will do that. We will discuss all that. You need to approach us and we will definitely get you onto the show. And we can get you remotely or we can get you into the station, whichever suits you. But, if you do have any topics that you'd like discussed, any interview that you'd like conducted here, we will do that for you as well. So, for whatever's left of the weekend, be out there, go, enjoy, be part of life, but above all, stay safe. So until the next time, it's goodbye from me.